I'm going to start all of the podcasts with rapid fire questions. Okay, 5 rapid fire questions. That's what I'm going to do. And you will give me your responses. Okay?
Okay.
Are you ready to play ball?
Yeah. I'm not good at sports, but I'll try.
Okay. So, what is your all-time favorite memory of the Caribbean?
This one is easy because I love the beach. Strange enough, though, although I lived in Antigua for a number of years, I only started liking the beach about 3 years before I left to come to the US to study. I know
Really?
it's so I think I like the beach because it was a time where I realized that I could de-stress. That I did some plays. It was where some of my ideas were birthed. It was a time for me to refocus, re-energize myself. So I think my fondest memory and the thing that I missed the most about the Caribbean are the beaches.
Got it. What is your favorite Caribbean saying?
I have to really think about this one because this one will go back to the land of my birth now, which is Dominica. And as the listeners and viewers will learn, is that I was born in Dominica, grew up in Antigua, and then moved from Antigua to study in the US. So my mother would always say, and I had to practice it. So pardon me to all the Dominicans that will be listening.
Yeah, including the host.
Okay, you should understand. Ba zafa fe bagay bao se shulazma pie, but pa shulazma che. And she would always say that when she give us something to do. And as presently I'm working with a bunch of high school students who are supposed to be intelligent savvy. And sometimes the things they do or they don't understand certain things. And I would give them a simple task and they don't do as I expect because they're on a different level. And I would always remember that phrase. Bazafa fe bagay bao se shulazma pie, but pa shulazma che. I don't know if you can translate.
Yes,
I was hoping you could. I thought about it, and I think it's what it's basically saying. When you give a child something to do, it's rather a matter of the feet because you're tired, you're weary, rather than a matter of the heart because they may not be doing it the way that you want or may not put as much passion as you would want. So that's what I got from it. And I only thought about it. I was like, what did that really mean? But I guess the two important things are the feet, which means you're really tired and you say, go get this, and they come back with something completely different because that was not their understanding. So that's one of my favorite saying.
I love it. Who has the best dialect? And give me your best impression of it.
I'm going to say, I'm Dominican and I'm proud of it, but I think Antiguans have the best dialect. They will say, Awaguan. And I love it. Awaguan. My brother was in town with me many, many years ago when he came to visit, and all he remembered was somebody saying, "May come," and he found that to be so amazing. All she says is, "May come." I didn't hear her. What's that?
Here's my favorite saying of Antigua. Okay, I want to joke it up. I want to joke it up.
That is a good one. And it can use when it's a serious situation, when it's even not a serious situation. I want to joke it out.
What is your go-to Caribbean song?
I don't have one. I'm going to be honest with you.
Are you serious?
I'll tell you why. I think the go-to Caribbean song changes according to how many new artists come out and how much that particular song inspire me. For example, I'll tell you this much. Claudette Peters came out, I think, last year, Carnival, with a song, Not You. And I don't know if you've ever heard it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, and that speaks to me. So at that point, that was one of my favorite. It says, you own the key to the door of your happiness. No matter what you do, you will never please them. So focus on life. make the right choice, ignore the voices. And
Yes.
sometimes you do know, you of all persons will know, people will pull you down, tear you down because you are a Caribbean immigrant. You are an immigrant. They hear it in your accent. And if you're
Yes.
like me, I make no apologies. I speak up and speak proud. And
Absolutely.
they will pull you down. So you got to tell yourself, not you. But many, many years ago, and I guess we're probably going to be showing our age, God bless her heart, singing Sandra from Trinidad.
Who?
And that
Singing
really,
Sandra.
yes,
Yes. Okay.
crying, voices from the ghetto.
Yes.
When I was growing up, I was told, oh, you're from the ghetto. And sometimes I tried to defend that. And I said, well, I'm not from the ghetto. I'm from the street that separate maybe the middle class area with the ghetto. And they said, no, no, you're from the ghetto. But I kept that in my mind. And I think I like that song because in that song, she spoke about drugs, teenage pregnancy, violence, and crime. And to me, those are the things that I could have fallen to and I witnessed growing up. And even now, it's even worse listening to the news from the Caribbean. And of course, it still speaks with me. Gypsy, little black boy, go to school and learn, little
Yes.
black boy. And sometimes that speaks to me that even though I'm here in the US, I remember I needed my education. I've got to push through. I've got to push through. You know, I spent 9 years in school. We'll probably talk more about that later.
We shall.
That was hard, but little black boy, go to school and learn. And I kept that in my mind. So these songs really speak to me.
That's very, very interesting, Colin. What is your favorite Caribbean artist, or who is your favorite Caribbean artist?
I think I like Claudette C.P. Peters.
Of course
but
you do.
again,
Of course you do.
But of course, I also like she does the live every Sunday.
Oh, you're talking about Colin XP.
Colin XP, you know,
from Dominica.
I like her. I like her vibes. I also like the Dominican artists. For me, I just think that we cannot be selfish with just one Caribbean, choosing one particular person. I like some of the Trinidadians, Alison Hines, one of my favorite. I think once you sing a song that really reflects the Caribbean, reflects our way of life, I'm your fan. I support you. I don't know if I'm speaking too much like a politician, but
you cannot help yourself, dude.
What are you trying to say?
Thank you for those answers for the rapid fire questions. We're going to get into the meat of the matter, which is your coming to America story.
Yes.
And I will start by letting people know that I have never called you Dr. Colin JnoFinn before.
Colin is fine.
I've always called you Colin because I knew you
way
before you had a PhD in education.
Yes.
So now you live in Arkansas. You hold a doctoral degree in education, development education, higher education, administration, and management.
Yes.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Tell us your coming to America story.
Okay. So I began working for the government. I'll start off there. And about 2 years, then decided, I realized that I had the skill, I had the knowledge, but I did not have any degree to back it up. And I said, no, I gotta go. At this time, I was like 30 something, and it was a struggle. Do you want to stay here with no degree, or do you just want to go overseas and get that degree? So I said, you know, let me go get it. I pulled myself together, got everything in place, got a partial scholarship, did what I had to do, and I came to the US to do a degree in mass communication with a concentration in public relations, because at the time I was a public relations officer for the government of Antigua and Barbuda, which is where we met and worked and coordinate and that sort of thing. So when I got here to the US, I was in Grambling, Louisiana. I was doing, as I said, an undergraduate in mass communication. But I met the director of the theater department, and I began to tell him what I did back home. And he said to me, you know, I think your passion is really in theater arts. because I was going to do an undergraduate in my BA in mass comm and then a minor. He said, no, I think your passion is really in theater arts. So to satisfy, but then when I went to the mass comm teacher or head of the department and told him, he said, no, your passion is in mass communication. And I was caught between two lovers.
Right, I know. You are in the
So,
middle.
so to satisfy both of them, I did a double degree. And it took me all 4 years. It was a double degree. Some of the classes were hectic. Some of there are days when I had 6 or 7 classes per a week or per day, but I made it work because I knew what I wanted. And of course, I made it work, and I graduated in 2013 with my undergraduate degrees, and I was proud of the lessons learned. It was not without trial, of course, because for about maybe 2.5 years, even now, I will tell you this much, just before I left in 2009, August, my mom was tragically murdered in, I think, July.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so that was hard. And of course, again, people were talking, well, you shouldn't go, you should take some time and more. But I remember when I told her that I was going to go, she encouraged me to go after my goals. And I said, no, I'm going to go. And I remember leaving home that early morning to catch my flight and leaving my grandmother and sister behind with tears in my eyes.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my God, that was the hardest thing. And sometimes when I'm interviewing and I speak about it, I can't help but get very emotional.
Yes.
I promise myself I'm going to be strong today. But I did that. And even going through my first semester was a bit tough. But I remember why I came. I remember how my mom pushed me. And I remember that education was what was going to get me somewhat out of the ghetto, as I was told. So that's how I got here. That's what I did. And I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I should go on.
No, you answered the question. I want to bring some context a bit for the listeners of the podcast. And you and I met in Antigua and Barbuda.
That's right.
You, as you said, you're from Antigua and Barbuda. And we met in Antigua and Barbuda when I came to Antigua and Barbuda to work. I took up the role as news director of Observer Media, which was an entire controversy by itself. Another Dominican coming to take that job at Observer. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. But I took up that job in Antigua, and I attended one of the press conferences that was hosted by the ministry that you were the public relations officer for. And that's how we met. So for context, you were working in the field of public relations at a high level, really. You were working with the government of Antigua, working with the minister for, I believe it was the minister for what affairs was it, Colin?
Social transformation.
Social transformation. That's right. And so leaving Antigua, leaving your job, a high prestige job, to come to the United States to follow your passion of wanting to get a degree. What was that like?
It was, I drove my own car, as you know. So when I came here, I didn't have a car. I had to catch the school shuttle. I had to share a room with somebody. It was a little bit uncomfortable. Of course, I was a non-traditional student. So that is important to stress. I was a non-traditional student, and I was in classes with, well, some of them were older, but generally student coming out of, what do you call it? Student coming out of high school. But of course, at the time also, which made it easier, we had a number of Dominicans and other Caribbean nationals who were also older, who were also at the college. So that made it a little bit more comfortable to be in the older person. So yes, coming out and leaving the things that you were comfortable to, accustomed to, it was hard. But again, I guess, thank God I was a focused person. I knew what I wanted, and I knew and I know by that age that getting something would mean that you have to do something uncomfortable. And one of the phrases that have always kept me going was, I do today what others won't, so that I can do tomorrow what others can't. And yes, it was hard. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was not what I expected, but I made it work. And I think in life, one lesson learned is that you've got to be flexible. You've got to be able to give up something in order to get something in return. You can't want a degree and still want to live life, be happy, going to every party. It doesn't work like that. You can't want to get the US experience and still want to have the Caribbean with you everywhere you go and have the Caribbean food. It doesn't work like that. You've got to make it work. All right. Yeah. One of the things you would know is that I love the brownies, bread, and bun. So
yes,
my sister came up the other day, excuse me, and I said, "Can you bring me up some bread?" And she mailed it to me. So I have it in the freezer, and once in a while I get a piece of it. And it's a little taste of the Caribbean, especially being here in Arkansas, where, you know, there is no Caribbean in sight. Well, you know what? I've heard of a Caribbean restaurant. They're from the Bahamas. I just haven't had the time to check it out as yet. So it's a sacrifice that you have to make, and you have to be willing to give up something in order to get something in return.
And you then pursued a master's degree and a PhD. How hard were those?
I don't know. I think I was just greedy. I remember after I woke up after graduating, excuse me, with my undergraduate, I slept with my diploma right next to me.
You did?
I got up the next morning and I just wasn't satisfied. I just didn't feel as if this is it. And at the time, I was asked to come back home by the then government, at least for a semester, to assist with something. So I did that. And then I came back, and then I was told not to do that because once I go home, I will not want to come back. Well, I did, and I went home, made whatever contribution that I could. And then when it was time to come back up, I called our person who is in charge of international students and say, "Hey, can I take an extra semester?" And she said, "No, because if you do that, your stuff is going to be pushed out of status." So because of that, I was forced to come back up and start my master's. And it was somewhat orchestrated that way because at the time, I had an opportunity to work with residential life at Grambling State. And the director of housing there told me, "Listen, go home, do what you have to do, and we will keep a graduate position open for you." And I was like, wow. And I did that. And he kept pushing and he said, "I know when you go home, you're not going to come back, you know." And I said, "I will." And so be it. I came back. Unfortunately, he passed on, God bless his heart, before I came back. But that position was there for me. And I came back. Of course, I met with some negativity because one person said to me, "I don't know why you came back here. And everything is different." So negative. You're going to face those negative persons.
Yes, yes.
Right? Even though the person who was then in charge said to me, "Yeah, come on, we will keep that position. We have it here for you." This particular person said to me, "No, you don't. I don't know why you're back here." So I came back, I did my master's. Of course, that was with struggles. They only had public administration. Well, that was what I was interested in. They were very limited in their masters. So I decided instead of doing a master's in mass communication, which sometimes I regret, let's do the master's in public administration because that would feed right back into my career, which is working in the government sector. Right. And I believe that while my master's was in public administration, a concentration in human resources, I felt no matter where you go, no matter what field you're in, managing people is always a task and will always be needed. And AI cannot do that for you. So I thought about it and I'm like, and I did that. And right after that, I was like, one of my professors said, "Colin, I just see you as doctor." And I thought about it. I applied to different universities. didn't get through, but of course, I applied at Grambling and I got through. And of course, they provided an opportunity for me to serve as a graduate assistant. And I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter where your degrees are from, as long as you get experience, as long as you have it to prove. Because again, my aim was to always go back home to serve.
Was it?
It was always the plan. And I did my degree. It was struggle. I had to fight some battles. But unfortunately, there was some struggles from back home. Let's just say there was a mix-up in communication. And of course, by then, the government had changed and things were different. And I just decided, you know what, I will just pay you whatever you have given me and continue to pay and probably just sever the ties, at least for now. But it is my hope one day to return and make my contribution to the Caribbean, and not necessarily Antigua, but wherever the opportunity arises. But that was a little bit of heartbreaking, because while dealing with those red tape from back home, I was actually going through my struggles with academics and trying to balance the both and trying to make $20 provide food and gas and my well-being. And it was a struggle, but it was a struggle that I would not have chosen it any other way, because I think I'm a better person today than what I was before.
So at what point did you tell yourself, I'm done with America and I want to go back to Antigua? Did you ever tell yourself that at any point? And that you wanted to just go back home because you felt a low moment?
I think that occurs from time to time.
No kidding.
There's a phrase that I normally say, but I won't say it now. But sometimes when certain things get on my nerves, or certain racist comments and attitudes are displayed to me, I say to them, well, you know, if I wanted to put up with this, I would probably go back home. So while I'm here, you're going to respect me, because I did not come here because I was somebody's favorite. I came here because of my experience and my qualifications, and you will treat me and respect me for that. So I just keep doing what I got to do, and realize that in life, you will, the sun can't shine every day. There are going to be low moments, but I think my steps are ordered by the Almighty God. When it's time to go back home, if that time ever comes, I think I will know that. But for now, I have to get that experience. And having good people in your life, educated people. I remember once I graduated, someone said to me, another Caribbean immigrant from Antigua, he said to me, fortunately, I had met him many years ago when I worked for a magazine, and I did a story on him, and I actually had to call him by the phone and interview him. And said to me, Colin, don't go back home yet, because if you have the degree, if you go back home, they're not going to respect you. Stay here, get the experience. But he did not know all of the other things that were happening. He didn't probably even know that I was an immigrant and I'm not allowed to stay in the country past a certain time.
Right.
So he was like, stay here and get the experience. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know, maybe it does make sense. Maybe it does make sense. Maybe this is the way it was supposed to go. And I accepted it. Again, going back home has its own trials, its own problems, its own issues. Staying here has the same. You just have to decide which one of the evils you're willing to put up with. Choose your battles. Which one are you willing to put up with?
So you went from student status to what?
I went from student status. I got permission from the US, I can't remember it right now, to work for a year.
Got it.
And that was a little bit of a struggle, because you can't apply for that too early, and then you can't apply for it too late. So by the time I had gotten it and everything had come in and I actually secured a job, that was kind of a little painful, because I had a doctoral degree, probably 5-6 years of housing experience, and my salary was below $30,000 a year. But I wanted a job. But I wanted a job and I wanted experience, and I took that job. And I know because of things that I heard, they asked like, well, why are we hiring somebody with a doctor to be a doctoral degree to be a hall director? But of course, somebody there fought for me. The good Lord had his eyes on me, and made a way for me. And I
Yes.
took that job. It was not the best, but
Yeah.
it was something to stay in status. So I took the job, worked for a period of time. Of course, that came with its own stress because, of course, people were a little bit reluctant. First, I'm like a double threat. I'm a Black man. I am a powerful, confident man because when I walk, I am proud of who I am,
Oh
where I
yes.
came
Oh yes,
from.
you do.
Okay. I tell people all the time when I teach these young men, they say to me, I said to them, there was a time in my life where people say to me, Colin, you're walking like you own the place. And I would say to them, not yet. You have to have that confidence. So I took that job and I stayed there for roughly probably a year and a half. And then I got a better opportunity. While I was at that job, again, God having his hand in everything, my 1 year work permit was about to expire. But of course, as you know, my dad, who is a US
Citizen.
citizen,
Mhm.
what everything was in process, but
Yes.
everything got held up because of COVID.
Got it.
Of course, it was a stress. I
Yeah.
had stress from trying to negotiate repayment deals with the government back home. I had stress trying to get my papers off the ground. Even though I was working with the lawyer, nothing seemed to be happening. You have to be aggressive. Every day they were waiting for me to give me an interview. When they gave me the fingerprint interview, I was so excited. I called my dear friend Chrissy and I said, Chrissy, I'm so excited. And while I'm reading the letter to Chrissy, I said, Chrissy, oh my God, this date has passed.
Oh,
The
are you
date they
kidding
gave
me?
the date has passed. And I contacted my lawyer, and he's like, there's nothing they had to do before that. Every time he sent in the document, they send it back. They say something is missing. He's like, they're telling us that the form has expired. But he said, this is just the process. They just keep doing that to frustrate the system. So eventually they gave me a time for the biometrics. That date has passed. They said there is no more dates available. They will contact me. I made it my business to call them every Friday afternoon when I got off work. Every Friday I called them. And at one point, the gentleman said to me, Sir, yes, I see that. Let me see what I can do. And I got that. I got it. I got an interview. Unfortunately, again, the hand of God in everything. I was in Louisville, Kentucky at the time, and I was literally just like maybe 10 minutes. Maybe no, for the first fingerprinting interview, I was probably like maybe 30 minutes. I could just simply drive rather than having to drive all the way back to Nashville because the lawyer had them moved everything to that office so that I could just easily go in and out. Eventually, I did my interview. My interview was literally 10 minutes from where I lived. Fortunately, everything worked out, and eventually I got my papers. I'm probably a year out from I can go ahead and apply for citizenship. It was a struggle. Of course, we don't have the time for me to tell you all the struggles and
I
all the
know,
frustrations.
I know.
That could have been one of the point where I said, you know what, forget it. You know what? But I was so hurt because of the way things were done back home. While some of it could have probably been nobody's fault, I was so hurt by it. I was like, what's the use? You don't value me. And of course,
Mhm.
I was always told my name alone, they let me know that you are not an Antiguan. Of course, you would have known that I had a good relationship with the then government. And of course, I thought I had a
Yes.
good relationship with the present government, but that was not the case. And it shows how politics can play a really divisive role in our society and in people's lives. And it was heartbreaking. And I was like, what am I going to do? At one point, that is probably one of those times where I felt, well, my new home didn't want me. I have problems and challenges here. What do you do? But of
Yes.
course, everything did work out in the end, and nothing that you really want to achieve comes easy. You got to fight for it. You got to fight for it. I remember telling myself, manna doesn't fall from heaven anymore. And even if it does, you've got to put yourself in a position and prepare for it. Get your basket, whatever it is. Do the work, do the study. Some people don't want to study. Some people
Yes.
don't. I cannot understand, with all due respect to some of my American friends who do not want to get their master's, their doctorate degree. And when you do, they have a problem with it. No, they're like, oh, y'all are intelligent. No, I have to read and study, and I made sacrifice. And I remember seeing people going off to different functions and traveling to different places. I couldn't. I remember I told this story just recently. One Christmas, I stayed on campus and I wrote the first 3 chapters of my dissertation. I got the directives and some examples from the professor, and I wrote my dissertation. It was hard, it was lonely, it was frustrating, but of course, I had my good friend Chrissy, who lived in the area, that I could always go by for a few. But I was focused. I knew what I wanted, and I was going to go after it.
Wow. So now you are working in Arkansas with a doctorate degree in education,
Yes.
and you are doing what?
So after I left Louisville, I went to the College of Worcester. The name alone. My nephew said to me one day, I don't know where you'll be finding these colleges. I said, I need that call. So I went to Worcester and I worked there for just under a year. That, of course, was somewhat of a red state, and a Black man with a Caribbean accent. It was okay. It was a really good experience, but there were some challenges that I experienced there. And I told myself it's time to get out. Apart from the snow, it was time. There was dealing with American kids comes with some challenges. And when they are of an international descent, it's a little bit different. But sometimes dealing with young people in general is a challenge. So I stayed there for under a year, and then I saw this job because I believe I am meant to do something greater. I believe that I am supposed to go wherever the opportunity lies to not only better myself, but to better the student and the community that I serve. So then I saw this opportunity. It looked interesting, and then I jumped on it. Surprisingly, when I jumped on the interview, one of the ladies introduced herself, and she told me who she was, and she said, I am from St. Kitts. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Okay.
Little Arkansas. So I have been here, and I serve as the assistant dean of Res Life. And it's a residential high school, college prep school for gifted students. So you have to score a certain level on the ACT. They are intelligent students. They are smart students. They know what they're about. But of course, they're a little bit green. We like to say they are book smart. But in terms of that street smart, some of them haven't acquired that skills yet. And they're very nervous. They're coming from the nooks and the cranny of Arkansas. And you've got to help them develop and help them. And it has been a wonderful experience working with them, supervising the staff, ensuring that the staff provide a safe and comfortable environment for them, because they live on campus and some of them, it's their first time away from home. There are certain rules and guidelines that must be followed because, for example, we have a system that tracks if they're leaving campus and where they are, and we ask them that they can't go out of the county. They have to get parent permission. They have to turn in their car keys. Every time they leave in campus, they have to put in a leave request. One of them fussed with me the other day because he couldn't understand why every night, we have it at different times for the weekends and for the weeknights. So for the weeknights, they have to do floor check, where the kids love it. The student leaders will come out and yell, floor check! And they like it. And they got to stand outside their door and we make sure that they're there. It doesn't happen often, but there have been once or twice where a student would not be where he's supposed to be or she would not be. And that's because at the time that student was dealing with some issues and the loss of a relative. So they had left campus, which is not acceptable at all. So we do a lot of programmings for them. And it's a pretty exciting, pretty demanding job. and working with other campus partners to ensure that the students are well taken care of. And that, of course, some of them are coming in and they're coming in with some of their social and emotional problems and directing them into the avenue that can really help them. And of course, supervising the programming to ensure that we are taking care of the entire needs. So as a Res Life staff, it's a challenge and it's a good opportunity. And for me, I'm just getting the experience and learning from them, because you can learn a lot from them. And because sad to say, the things that I have learned in school and the theory, which might still be applicable, but they are now living in that present stage, and you've got to be able to somewhat meet them in the middle and help them along that way. And work with them. And sometimes we have a little bit disagreement, because I was raised one way, being from the Caribbean. Don't put your feet on people's chair.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. You cannot help an American kid with that. You just cannot.
So we get into it. I say, hey guys, you can't do that because you're messing up. So I think one of the joy is just learning from the staff, learning from the student. And one of my greatest accomplishment, I would say, is that I saw a need. And to make a long story short, I started a mentorship group for young men. And that has been a challenge, to put it simple, but it has also been a joy. I was just thinking this weekend that a student he said he was being interviewed for STEM Day. And I know he came to my office and he said he wanted a suit, because he's from the Middle East, and he said they don't believe in wearing suits or something like that. So I got him the suit, and then he came back and he told me the interview went well and he would share it with me. And I was just talking and doing what he asked, but it's only after he left I realized, wow, he felt comfortable enough to come and say, I need to borrow a suit. He felt comfortable enough to report back to me and tell me the interview went well. And he dressed, because that's one of the things I teach them. What are the different types of dressing? Social, casual, elegant. And I didn't even realize he was doing an interview via Zoom, and he got his shirt and his tie and his jacket. So that made me felt proud. I speak all the time of one of our students. He was the co-president of the club last year. He got accepted into WashU University. And he also got the Gates Scholar. And I remember getting mad with him, because he came to me like maybe 4 weeks before he had to do an interview. And he wasn't taking it serious. And I got mad with him. But a week before the interview, he started to take it serious. And I said, this is what you need to say. I say, listen, you need to tell them a story. He is from Ethiopia. I said, tell them a story. You are a first generation. You're the first in your family to go to school. Your father does this. Don't be ashamed of it. This is what is going to get you the interview. But every time you see these little progress, these little steps, like planting a seed, you're not going to see it grow up and bear fruit the same day. Sometimes, but sometimes not. It may take years. So it's a wonderful opportunity. And let's just say that I'm looking forward to my next adventure. I have worked, I studied in Grambling, worked in Kentucky, Ohio, Arkansas. So I'm looking for my next adventure. And, it's funny. I say I spent 9 years in school. And I remember when I was going to college, I said, by the time I finish in school, I won't remember how to work. I was telling myself, I didn't realize what I was telling myself. I was actually going to be in school for almost 9.5 years.
Right.
And then I tell myself, I remember years ago, I am going to travel the world. I'm going to go around and see things and do things. And just yesterday, I volunteered at a back to school event for a group. And when I introduced myself to this lady, they were having a function next door, and it's the Arkansas Council of the Arts. And I met this lady, and I was telling her what I did and what my dissertation focused on, which I probably didn't say. My dissertation focused on using the creative arts to help freshman students improve their communication skills, their social skills, their time management skills. I'm going to tell you this, you probably don't know this, but when we were working in Antigua, you made a comment and you said, look at them, look at how they dress. Who is going to take you serious?
I'm sure I said that.
Who is going to take you serious? And sometimes I don't want to dress, but I dress and I go downstairs and the kids see me and they say, Dr. Finn, you're looking nice today. And that makes me feel good. And I
Yes.
always remember when you said, why are they dressed like that? Who is going to take you? And you know you were a fashion diva when you stepped into the room.
You said where? You said where?
Huh? Oh, you are a fashion diva. So I'm like, who's going to take you serious? And it doesn't cost a lot. I said to people all the time, when I wash some clothes, I don't put them in the dryer. I let them air dry. You
Yes.
preserve your clothes.
Yes,
So
yes,
you
yes.
gotta take care of yourself, build up yourself. And that's what I do. And hopefully one day I'll get to where I really want to be.
Which is where? Which is where?
I think in my present position, I implement and somewhat subdirect. I think it's just fair to say that I think one day I want to be in a position where I set the rules and the policies and the guidelines. I want to be the one that makes the decision and hand them down to be implemented. And that could be anywhere. I think one of my dreams is to be a vice president of student affairs.
Yes, I can see.
I have seen things. I have seen things. I have heard things. And one of my favorite song, or my go-to song, it's from the script Hall of Fame. And it says something like, you could be a master, dedicate yourself, and you could sit in the Hall of Fame. And that's where I want to be. And wherever that Hall of Fame is, but I know that I have the capabilities, the ability, the creativity, the charisma, the knowledge to be at the top and to be direct and to be firm. Because sometimes people look down on you because of your upbringing, because of where you're from. This is my story. This is why the song from Singing Sandra, Crying, it reminds me of where I'm from. It reminds me of where I came from because I saw some things. And I could have been those persons who are in jail, who are dead, who sad to say, who probably don't have any direction for their life. But for me, I think I'm heading there. And I think to have moved from a hall director to a assistant director of Res Life at the College of Worcester, and then serving as an assistant dean as a college prep school, I have no regrets so far of investing in my education, paying back my dues. I have no regret. I have no regret of the tears that I have cried, of the pain that I have felt, of the rejection that I have been given. I take it all in. I think I heard Oprah say just this week, everything that you have been through will serve a purpose. And that's what I try to do. I try to look at it through a positive outlook.
So here's one of the things that I want to know. As a Caribbean immigrant myself, I know that Caribbean immigrants live two lives. They go to work, they do their regular jobs, they participate in their regular jobs, and then they are listening to all the talk shows in the Caribbean. They are calling on the radios in the Caribbean. They are fully in the politics of the Caribbean. What's your double life living in America?
I didn't realize it was a double life. So people come into my office and I quickly have to mute the speaker. I remember last year, I'm not sure when it was, but it was election in Antigua. And the people would come into my office and they would be giving me this strange look, like, what is going on? And politics is dramatic, it's heated.
Absolutely.
I had to explain. So I said, it's election back home, and our election is very heated. So that's what is happening. So I try to close in my door. I think I'm very concerned and very passionate as to what happened in the islands, Dominica or Antigua, or the Caribbean in general.
Yes.
I think that is it for me. I think there is some way or something I can contribute to once I'm given that opportunity. So I think for me, it's very important to be aware of what is going around in your world. I think that's what I do during the day. And then in the evenings, I come on and I turn on ABC to get an idea of what is happening locally. I
Around
always
you.
around me. And then after I'm done with that, in the evenings, I go back and tune in to the radio talk shows to hear what is happening.
Caribbean
Because,
people are completely plugged in to what's going on in their home country.
because
100%.
we have families. We have
Yes.
families back there. We invest in one way or the other back home. So I think it's important for us. And I think living in the US, we tend to see things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to have a broader perspective, and we want to see how well we can contribute and lend our voice, provide a different perspective. Because at the end of the day, we are supposed to rise, and we are supposed to have our people encouraging them to rise and to think and to inspire them to be different and to be great. Because I think at the end of the day, maybe if we really think about it, if we had a choice, we probably, and it was more profitable, emotionally, psychologically,
Yeah.
yeah, we would probably return home. We'd probably return home. And but for me, I think that a phrase I heard many years ago, bloom where you are planted.
Yes. Yes. Final question before we wrap up is what don't the Caribbean governments know about their citizens living in the United States, and what should they know?
I think that they probably don't know that we're still very passionate about what happened in our own country. And that to a certain extent, we want to vested interest into what happens in our own country. And I think that when the law is there, that people can just, the opportunity is there for people to just go into the parliament and change laws to better facilitate and accommodate their citizens, but yet it's not being done. You wonder sometimes why. And maybe I am not that familiar with it, so forgive my ignorance if I'm not. But for example, for some reason while studying, my name was taken off of the voters list, and rightly so. But for now, if I want it to be put back on, they're saying that I have to be back home for 30 days. That's not possible.
Yeah.
But yet, you still want me to contribute, and which I continue to do, because I have, there was a point in time in my life where, and I still do, I direct, assist, and help people with shows and pageants and give them ideas from where I am. So why is it that it's going to take so long for me to, you want me to give up this opportunity, when truth and in fact, being here is also an opportunity for me to gain that experience, which I can then transfer and come back home and help contribute and develop. So while they keep saying that there is a brain drain, I think at the same time, they have got to learn to listen, open up, be creative, to see how well we can attract these people, because these people are just not living because, oh, America is so fun to live. No, I don't always think so. I think sometimes people leave because they just don't feel valuable. They just don't feel as if they are a part of the system. It feels like there is a certain elite group, and that elite group is the one that gets pushed up. But if you're like a person who is an immigrant in Antigua, you have a particular name, you're from the ghetto, hey, nobody's fighting for you, nobody's pushing for you, which I think is part of my story, and probably one day will be featured in my book, Getting to the Finish Line. But it's a pain, and I guess maybe one day things will change. But for now, you just got to keep focusing positive and do what you can to help those who are in the process and who are dealing with this negativity and frustration. Because I still speak to people back home, and they tell me how they're frustrated and how they hurt and feel neglected, and it feels like other persons are always getting ahead. So I think they really need to know that people are hurting and people want to contribute, but you have to make make the opportunities available for people to serve and be a part of what is happening.
I think that is the most ideal way to end, and to say thank you, my friend, Dr. Colin JnoFinn, for participating and for being here and telling us your story on the Caribbean Immigrant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish you all the success with this. You know, you're always very creative, and I think this podcast will do very well. So I wish you all the success in the world, and to all the listeners, I hope that they are inspired, and something that I have said will inspire you to keep pushing and keep going. You're just not supposed to be here in the US occupying space, being another number. Make your mark, leave your mark, so that this world will know, as, is it Beyonce? That
Yes.
You were here.
Dr. Colin JnoFinn, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And we will do this again on the Caribbean Immigrants. I am Kamala Aaron.